Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. This is a video I've kind of been working up to for a while here, and it's going to be about my experience installing solar panels here on my home in Calgary. So I think this was actually didn't take too long to do, and one of the first things I had to decide is, does it make sense to do it? And then the second, once that question was answered yes, then it was move on to how I'm actually going to achieve it. I didn't find that there were a lot of great resources that were relevant to the jurisdiction I'm in, which is Calgary, Alberta. And I think so. When it comes down to solar, there's sort of two parts to it. The first is just really the technical stuff, right? They get the panels and the inverters and the wiring and the hookups and all that stuff kind of works, and whether or not it makes sense. What does your sort of landscape look like? What does your sort of south-facing roof look like, and so on. But So that's kind of like the first thing. But the second thing is really regulatory and also sort of taxes and incentives and things like that. So for this video, if you're not from Alberta, I would say the regulatory stuff wouldn't necessarily be relevant. However, the technical stuff should be relevant to anyone who wants to do this project. So I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to show you the things that I learned, the things I understood, where I would start if I was doing this from scratch, the things to look for, the things to look out for. And then ultimately, leave it open for questions and things for people who are kind of stuck at the beginning stages of solar, not really sure what to do about it. So with that, we'll kind of jump into this, and I'll be kind of jumping all over the roof and through different web pages and data and stuff like that. And hopefully this is a useful resource for you.
So why did I really start considering solar in the first place? Well, I first started tracking this in about 2015. Really the major reason is Alberta gets so much sunlight, and particularly Calgary gets a lot of sunlight throughout the year. And although we're in northern latitude here at 52 degrees north, it makes up for just a sheer amount of sunlight. So for me, it was, I was watching the technology improve, getting better and better, getting panels getting more efficient, price coming down. But really the big thing for me is it's just the way I think. I'm an engineer. Like there's free energy hitting the roof of my house, heating up my attic all summer long. I just installed a new air conditioner, and the amount of extra energy it takes to run that, it's just like, why not use the free energy that's hitting my roof and heating up my house anyway? So that was kind of the impetus for it. But on top of that, the price point was now reaching the point where it was price competitive with traditional energy. So I won't get into the politics of why that could be. But so really, it was really the technology and the availability of free energy that really wanted me to do that. So here's some of the things to think about when you're getting solar for yourself. So there's kind of three things that you have to look at. Now, the first thing is, what's your roof situation look like? Obviously, you can mount these on the ground, but you really want to get them up above the prevailing obstacles. And so what does your roof look like? And in my case, my roof was asphalt shingles. I had installed hail-proof 50-year shingles 10 years ago. So in 2015 about, it's 2024 making this video. And so what does your roof look like? What do the slopes look like? Do you have a lot of south-facing roof? Do you have a lot of open space? Do you have sunlights? Do you have ventilation? What's up there? Antennas, satellite dishes, things that may be in the way. Because if you got all that crap up there, then it's not going to work so well. So that was the first thing, is what the roof looked like. And I had a lot of south-facing roof on both my house as well as the garage here, the shop. Second is, what does the sky look like? What does your southern horizon look like? Obviously, you need to look at sort of that macro level. Are there trees? Are there other houses that get in the way? How does the sun transit across the sky? Things like that. But more at the micro level, do you have chimneys and things that are going to block visibility? I have one of those whirlybird vents on my roof, and those will actually block a fair amount of sunlight. And so all that should be considered when you're doing this. How much sun do you actually get? Are you in a rainy climate? Are you getting sun on the high points of the year, in the summer, or are you not? Right, and that kind of depends on what area you're in. And then, what do your angles look like when you're looking east and west as well as south? Because obviously in the summer here, we have 16 hours plus of sunlight in the middle of summer. And so you're picking up a lot in the east and the west as well. So those are all considerations for what is sort of your view or your sky look like. And some people just, they have major trees. It's just never going to make sense. They have a flat roof. It's just not going to make as much sense. Then the last bit's financial. What are the price quotes looking like? What are the price of the panels? What's the sort of price per watt, if you will? And what kind of incentives or programs, either local, provincial, or federal, that you can use to help sort of pay for these, or with your power company, for example. So those are all the kind of things you want to look for. So let's kind of get into now how to do it. So right off the bat, like, I'm very much a DIY person. I want to do this myself. It seemed relatively simple. I mean, I did my own roofs. I built my own shop. I did all my own wiring. It didn't occur to me as something that was too intimidating. I think the biggest fear is, dropping one of the very large panels. That would probably be the biggest thing that I'd be concerned about personally. But other people are just terrified of being on a roof, terrified of electricity. And so you kind of got to make the DIY versus the hiring a contractor decision, for yourself. So if you're going to do DIY, here's a couple of the recommendations of things I'd look at. First of all, what does your roof situation look like? Do you have a lot of vent problems? Do you have a lot of things in the way? Your solar panels can only get within about a foot of the edge of your roof line, so you're going to need room to work. So are you able to actually do that? When it comes to what are the things that you need in order to integrate, and this is the stuff that I had a really hard time finding. So when you install solar panels, you become what's called a micro generator. And now what that means is you're generating the kilowatts, not the megawatts, right? So you're allowed to generate as much power as you use in a year. So I use about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. My house here, I'm a little on the high side for what most people would use. And so that's about 12,000 a year. So you're allowed to go to 105% of that. That's based on sort of the design that is submitted to the regulatory authority. So you submit a design, say this design is anticipated to make this much energy, and you can go to 105% of that. I'll come back to that a little bit later. The next thing is you need a bi-directional meter. And here in NMAX, Calgary, they've already installed those on most houses. So if not, they will put one in for you. It doesn't actually cost you anything. And really, the only thing you need is an electrical permit to do the installation. Believe it or not, there's no development permit. There's nothing like that. There's not even a building permit. It's just an electrical permit and a resulting electrical inspection. So when it comes to DIY, you're drilling the holes in your own roof, right? So you're going to want to know how to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in the next section. So the alternative is hiring someone to do it. And so this is the route that I went. I ended up hiring a company called Renewables. Now, I'm not making this video in order to, recommend them, but I did actually have a good experience with Zeno. I was somewhat nervous. And the reason why I was nervous about hiring this out is solar is becoming a bit of a free-for-all right now. You're seeing a lot of incentives, a lot of, get your solar for free if you live in Alberta kind of stuff. That's a crock. Don't go for that stuff. There are programs that incentivize you to do this, but no one's giving you free solar panels, believe me. So a couple of things you want to look for when you're picking a company. Get several quotes. I think the best thing I ever did was join a Facebook group, which I'll bring up the webpage here. I learned so much from this group, and there are other ones for DIY solar and things like that. But ultimately, these people will be able to answer your questions, and hopefully this video will help answer some of your questions as well. But get several quotes. The pricing, I can't share what I did for my 32 panel system with Zeno because I signed an agreement saying I wouldn't share the price. But I think you're going to want to see something around $1,000 per panel. So I have 32 panels. You can kind of do the math. If you have more panels, the price per panel might go down. If you have fewer, it might go up a little bit. It depends how much how much you use. If you have something like an electric car, you might even need more than 32 panels. So that's sort of a ballpark price. There are companies to avoid. Just ask in those Facebook groups. Everybody already knows who those people are. But again, I use Zeno. They worked out pretty well. one of the things that you need to be mindful of is, so they will design the system for you. In fact, they'll all do it. So as part of the quoting process, they'll design you a system. Some people will come to your house, some of them will do it virtually, but they will design you a system and say, this is what you can expect. They're somewhat incentivized to build systems with more panels. So what I mean by that is, if you put panels on the south, they're going to generate the maximum amount of energy. If they put them on the east and west, it's going to generate a little bit less. So if they want to put in more panels to reach your 105%, they're going to put them more on like east, west, sometimes you even see north. So the more panels they sell you, the more money they make. So consider that when you're picking the company. You want to try and maximize on the minimum number of panels. There is a bit of a gotcha to that, which I kind of learned a bit after the fact. You're allowed 105% based on the design submitted. So if you submit a bad design at 105%, you might get, say, 36 panels in my case. And then I could reallocate those panels later to a better spot and be generating more like 120%. It's a little bit of a trick that you can use if you want to generate even more power. I'm not endorsing that you do that. I'm just saying that you can get away with that because nobody comes and checks where the panels are after the fact. They're only checking that it's hooked up properly. That's another thing to consider. When you do actually hire someone to install it, I think the number one thing to pay attention to is how they penetrate the roof, because they're going to have to drill like 100 different holes in your roof. And if they don't know what they're doing, they're going to create 100 different leaks in your roof. Zeno used a system called K-Flash. At least that's what they used to. I'll post a video to the K-Flash system here, but basically it creates a cover that goes over every single one of your mounting feet for your panels, your racks, your aluminum racks. In the end, they actually tried to install without these, and I demanded that they get them because that's what it said in their engineering paperwork. I actually asked for their engineering drawings. And that way you make sure that no water ingress can occur. This is why this is important. If they screw up one house, they're probably screwing up all the houses. And in 8 to 10 years, they're going out of business. They can't support all these lovely warranties and claims that they've made to you because they made a mistake on every single house. And again, with the building blitz that's going on, they're hiring kind of anybody with a pulse to install these things. I actually was really happy with Zeno and the professionalism of the people who showed up at my place. They showed up on time. They were extremely safety focused. They did the whole thing in 4 days, even though they said it would take 5. So I was actually quite pleased with the process in them. And the other thing that was kind of less known to me at the time, when Zeno is finished the installation, they can flip on the system and walk away. There's enough trust between Zeno and the electrical inspectors that they allow you to turn on before you become a microgenerator. So what that means is you're not going to get credit for your microgeneration, but you're going to be generating the power. So for me, it took about 6, actually it might have been more like 8 weeks to get the microgeneration permit. That's 8 weeks of power that I was able to generate and use to run my air conditioner throughout the summer, while other people were waiting for the microgeneration permit to come through. I'll show you where you actually discover if you have a microgeneration permit. So there's actually a website here in Alberta, and you can log in there. And so when I called NMAX and said, hey, I'm done, I'm waiting, they said, you check out this website, and down here on the bottom, I'll show you where they determine once you're actually approved for that. Okay, so that's a bit about what it was like, hiring a company to do this. So let's get into the technical stuff. So a few of the things you want to consider when you're mounting panels to your roof. First of all, what is the panel orientation to the sun? So I learned this several years ago, but when you get, say, a panel rated at 100 watts, what that means is it will generate 100 watts of DC energy, so it'll be direct current, 100 watts, at high noon when the panel is sitting at the equator, pointed directly at the sun. So flat on the earth, pointed directly up. That's what it means. So that's considering an optimal circumstance. So everything less than optimal is going to start going down. So for example, I have 405 watt long heat panels. Now long E panels, pretty standard. It seems like most of the companies are using long E. They're made in China. All the panels are made in China. You can't get away from that. Well, maybe Maybe you can, but I'm not aware of how. And they're rated at 405 watts. And here you can see the website where it actually has the price per panel. And I am getting about max 450 watts out of these panels. Pardon me, 350 watts out of these panels. And so what that means is it's not quite optimal circumstances. And that 350 watts I was getting was right around the solstice. So maybe my panels could be pointed a little bit better. We still have some refraction of the rays that happens here at the northern latitudes. So if you were inside the Tropic of Cancer or Capricorn, you could probably get up to that 405. And obviously you need a completely clear day. Another thing is the temperature also plays a factor. So if it gets really, really hot, the panels become less efficient. So all of these are variables that you can play with. So the best circumstance you're ever going to have is it's June the 21st, it's a completely clear day, and it's cool. And that's where you're going to see the maximum amount of sun. One of the things I also noticed is the panels work at a fairly oblique angle. So even though you think that you want the panel to point directly at the sun, what I'm seeing is if the rays are even coming in at oblique angles, it is generating some energy. So I don't think perfection is needed when it comes to aiming. It needs to be generally oriented towards the sun. Like for instance, flat on the ground won't work as good as sort of 25 degrees. But it does pick up energy from lots of crazy angles. Even first thing in the morning, I'll notice my southern panels are actually picking up a little bit of energy. So aiming isn't necessarily perfect. So when they hook these things up, you have, just pretend these pieces of paper, 2 panels, and each panel is connected through an inverter. So the panels are outputting direct current. I'm not sure what the voltage is at. And then they go into what's called an inverter, and it inverts the power to an alternating current at 220 volts, which is then put into your electrical panel. And it can go in anywhere, any panel in the system. So I have a sub panel in my garage, and I also have the primary panel in the house. So the panels can hook into there individually, and then collectively they also communicate with an information line that goes to a control box, which is what then accesses from the app in your house. You can actually see what you're generating in real time or historically. And that can be accessed through a website, or it can be accessed through your app. So the connections are all kind of directly from the panel to the inverter and then wired into the house. Those are fairly good sized cables because we are dealing with a fair amount of current that's coming through these. The higher the voltage, the lower the current, hence Ohm's law, which is why they're using 220 instead of 110. You need to have a meter on your house that's bidirectional if you also want to sell back to the grid, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. There is a limit on how many houses in a general area can go with solar, because if you start getting too much energy in a given region, I think that starts causing problems for the grid as a whole. So there's going to be limits. So if you're in an area that already has heavy solar, you want to get in sooner than later, or you're not going to be able to do it at all. Another thing that I learned, which actually struck me by surprise, is if the power goes out to the grid, your panels will turn off. And the reason why they do that is a safety reason, because if you're still pumping energy back into the grid when they think the grid's turned off, you can electrocute the workers. So the only way to make your system work when there's a power outage is to get batteries and go completely off grid. So that's a major limitation that I didn't know even until after these were installed. But there are these automatic turnoffs, and there's really no way to get around that. Nor would you want to, because it could hurt people. So when it comes to mounting the panels, a south-facing panel will net you about, I said, 350 watts. A west or an east-facing panel throughout the day, again, the middle of summer, will generate about 85% of that. So consider the best energy you're going to get is south-facing, and east or west is going to get you about 85% of that. Again, that's the case here in Calgary. So you need, you could do the math on how many extra panels you need to add if you don't have south-facing roof. But it works out to about 0.85 is what you get as opposed to the south-facing ones. All right, so let's talk more jurisdictional regulations, kind of the incentives and things that are going on here in my region. So the first major thing is the Canada Greener Homes Grant and Loan. So right off the bat, there's something called Canada Greener Homes Program, and you're allowed to get a loan for up to $40,000, pay off interest-free over 10 years. And it's for any type of improvements to make your home greener. So you could do insulation, you can do windows, you can do a new furnace, but solar panels will give you the maximum up to $40,000. In order to apply for that program, first of all, you have to go through an application process, whatever. But then they actually have to come and do a baseline test of your home and see how energy efficient it is, and then a post refit test again. So you have to do a pre and a post. This is good old government job making 101. It costs about $600 to $700 to do that process. You can get some of that covered back in grants. But the idea is they need to see the before and after before they're going to approve it. So if you're going to do a DIY program and do it all yourself, you're not going to be eligible for all of these types of programs. So you just got to be careful whether or not your self-install will still be eligible for the loan program. I wasn't so much sure, particularly on the grant side of it, which we'll talk about next. So when I did this in early 2024, there was also a $5,000 grant. So that's just free money that they will write off for doing this installation. And again, it depends on having someone in to do a pre and post evaluation. And then you've actually expended money to a company to install, whether it's your solar panels or your windows or what have you. So the grant is only eligible if you're actually paying out of pocket to other people and not just buying your own panels. So that's the Canada Greener Homes loan. One of the things about the grant and the loan is even though they have the same name, they have totally different websites that look the same. So it takes you a while to actually figure out which one you're dealing with. It's really poorly designed, and I'm sure that's probably why they get half the phone calls that they do. The other way you could do it, and different municipalities have these programs, is you can actually borrow the money from the city and then pay it back through your property taxes. So the advantage of that system is if you sell your house, now the new person actually has to pay off the remainder of those panels. I use the same program here when they paved the rear alley at my house. There was a 20-year sort of $200 a year fee put on every homeowner for 20 years, and then you got your lane paved interest-free. So that was a neat program. Zeno and the companies like them, they don't like this program because it's more work for them. They like Greener Homes Loan because they basically have to put in zero work and they get $40,000. Versus the Calgary program, they have to put in a lot of extra work, so they don't want to do it. So you can, they will do it, but you have to twist their arm to make them do it. All right. So hang on to your receipts. You're going to have to do your pre and post inspection. You're going to have to do your electrical inspection. And, you know, the grant check came in the mail and the loan check came electronically, just like your income tax. So last, I'm going to talk about living with solar. So kind of what it's been like. It's been June, July, August, now September, been 4 months of this. First of all, what you want to do in the summertime is you want to join what's called a solar club. I don't know if other jurisdictions have this, but there's basically one solar club in Alberta. And then once you're in the solar club, which you don't have to do anything to get into it, you subscribe to a company who will put you on a seasonal solar plan. So what that means, in the summer, you get a different rate than in the winter. So how that works is, let's say the standard price of energy in your jurisdiction is 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is fairly close to what it actually is here in Alberta. If you build a solar plan, you'll actually start buying your power in the summer for 30 cents, but you can also sell it back to them at the same rate. So regardless whether you're at 10, 15, 20, 30, it doesn't matter. You're buying and selling at the same rate. So the concept is, in the summer, you're giving more back than you're using. And so you're actually making money at 30 cents. And then in the winter, you fall back to the 10-cent rate where you're not quite making as much and you're buying it from them. Now you're still subsidizing yourself because you are generating some power in the wintertime. So they call this the Solar Club. There's about 30 different companies who will actually do this for you. The second part of what the solar clubs do is they can also sell your carbon offset credits. So you know that whole scheme, like when you're like flying on an airplane and they say, hey, would you want to offset your carbon emissions by paying extra? And then you say no. Well, if you did say yes, you're actually buying it from this pool of carbon credits that come from things like people generating solar. So what can you make from that? Well, I haven't actually had a return on that yet, but I think it's somewhere between $500 and $800 a year that you can get back selling your solar credits. So the solar clubs will also help you do that. So again, you switch in the spring, which is around say April, and then you switch back in the fall, which is kind of around October. Generally speaking, you want to use your own power first. So for instance, let's say you have an electric car. You want to be charging that electric car during the day, because that's when you're making the most energy, and you want to use your power first. Because even though you're buying and selling at the same rate, and it might seem like it's going to come out as a wash, there are fees on top of that as well. So you kind of average out those fees over time, and you pay a little bit more in the exchange. So you're a little bit better off using your own power when you can, rather than charging at night. When you start getting your bills in, you'll start generating a credit. So I'll just show you what a copy of my, I think it was my August bill, looked like here, where I actually started getting microgeneration credit because I was creating more energy than I was using in the month of August. One of the cool things about being with NMAX, which I am, is you can apply those fees to the rest of your bill. So NMAX also provides your waste collection. They provide your water and sewer. In my case, they also, actually no, I guess they don't provide my natural gas, but they could. And so you can apply your credits to the rest of your bill, including all your administration fees and rate riders and things like that. So that's kind of one advantage to that. I think that's kind of most of the process. Really, it remains to be seen how long these things last for. I believe that if I have a 10-year warranty with Zeno, so a 5-year workmanship warranty, 10 years on the inverters and 25 years on the panel. I think it's silly to expect that these panels are going to last 25 years. I think it's more likely that they're just willing to swap them out if you're willing to remove them. I think after the first 5 years, Zeno's probably going to charge you for that service, even though the panel replacement is free. And it all depends on everybody's still staying in business. Now, Longy, they've been around a long time. The inverters, I think they're called the DSP3. You can see them here on the website. A friend of mine already had one of his fail, and he's only had his panels for 5 months. We'll see. To me, in 10 years, the entire system will be paid off through the loan, and then I'm just generating energy for free. I don't think any of these panels would be that complicated to swap out. The inverters are mounted underneath the panel, so they're a little bit more annoying to get to. But at the end of the day, if you're comfortable being on your roof and you're comfortable, with basic tools, I think you could swap these out. And so I think long term, it's only going to get smarter and better. And so I'm happy that I went the solar route. Again, if all the variables line up, that you have a good house, the financial incentives seem to make sense. I think if you can get your panels for under about $1,000 a panel, I think I'm profitable somewhere around 11 or 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So if the prevailing rate went to that, which it's going to, I'm going to be coming out ahead. So hopefully this helped you with your own process for achieving solar, whether it's in Alberta or elsewhere. And happy to answer your questions in the comments, and hopefully this is of use to you.